Max was such a healthy kid, played sports constantly, was very active, happy, and you know, I could tell when we got the diagnosis that there was something definitely wrong with Max, and I think he knew it as well.
After we first got the diagnosis, we were told that Max had a 40% chance of surviving. And then after they ran more tests on his leukemia, we went from 40% to 10%.
No one ever thinks that their child is going to have cancer. It's just, you know, when you're pregnant, you think of all the other things that can happen. At least that never entered my mind.
You go in knowing you've got a few strikes against you automatically. There's not just the cancer. It's acute myeloid or acute myelogenous. Call it what you want. It's the bad leukemia. And people know that from day one.
And our whole world was turned upside down in the matter of one phone call.
Well, you know, honestly, I don't know how families do it. I know you do what you have to do when you're faced with that kind of a challenge, but it disrupts everything in a family. For the parents, you know, all of a sudden you're told your child might have a fatal disease, and that's the most scary thing you can be told. And then you have to go through all this treatment that in itself is risky and could also cause a fatal complication even if the disease doesn't. And then you see your child be sick and you have to be strong for them and get them through it, and you know, that's just incredible stress.
4 out of 5 children with leukemia have ALL. 1 in 5 has AML, and AML is harder to treat than ALL.
So it's kind of like AML's here, and if there's a tree growing of differentiation, ALL's up here, and it's harder to target the thing down here.
Cancers are very rare. They're harder to work on. So most of the funding tends to go to the cancers that are present in large amounts. And that's led us to a lot of progress in ALL, which we're very glad about. But now we need to focus on the cancers where we've made less progress, and AML is one of those.
We really need to do more research. There was a lot of progress made in the battle against childhood leukemia in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And to be perfectly frank, I think the last 15 to 20 years, things have slowed down. It's not because people aren't trying, but it's harder. The easy problems were solved, and it's not one of the high priorities for funding or research anywhere, because it's affecting a small constituency, if you will, who don't have a big voice. I think that's wrong, but I think that really is the way it is. And so we need to give a voice to childhood cancer, and we need to give a voice to research for childhood cancer.
It needs a lot of attention, and funding research is so important. That's the only way they're going to make strides in curing these kids. So what Jane and Chris are doing is just so very important, and they have my full support.
Without the doctors, you can't do the research, but without the money needed to do the research, the doctors are going to sit there and do nothing but the same. The research is it, and it saves lives. It saved this little child's life. She in no means was the run-of-the-mill cancer patient.
We're probably about 1/3 of the way through the genetic testing that we need to do on these samples. We expect to be done with it in about a year to a year and a half, and to start to analyze the data so that we know which genes are important and which genes are not. A typical study of this size for grant funding for the whole project would be about $300,000, but every little amount of money helps us move forward.
And I think if you really want to fight this problem, you have to have a dedicated organization to do it, who has tunnel vision and is only going there. I don't think it's going to happen if we rely on the big societies to do it.
I think the most important thing is research. You know, I think for all of us, when we're asked for donations, donations of things like toys, things like that are very attractive to give, but they're immediate and they're short-lived. I think we can win. We just have to try hard enough. We have to have enough money to do it, and we have to try hard enough.
If there were a cure for AML, it's the dream of so many people.
This is something that we need to pay attention to, that we can't turn our back on this anymore. So our vision for the Blue Butterfly campaign is to help eradicate childhood acute myeloid leukemia, or AML.
If we can spare children from having to endure that, that just would be phenomenal.
That's the world I want to live in. And when that day comes, because I believe it will, there's going to be a party at our house.
Why, oh why can't I?